All right, cool. We are now here. Uh, Looks like the start of the video included random things, just the coffee stuff and all that. So we're stuck with that. But we got we got the writing and we got the person. And we got a loud as fuck fan. So God bless. It's going great. But yeah, so this is the second episode. Already making improvements. I couldn't sleep for shit. So you've got a tired Carlisle, and you got a Detroit Saturday. So this will be fun. My windows are wide open. I have no idea what's going to happen. But I don't know if I can even think about updates or anything that I'd like. I don't know. I'm just kind of fucking out of here. But hope everybody's having a blessed May. Hope it's being real fun. And I got the fucking threatening eyes for a second. I don't know. Oh. What's the point of this series? It's to have fun. It's to enjoy yourself. Relax. It's a nice little Saturday for sharing. Wow. Look at that. Man. This weed comes all over you, doesn't it? So, let's see. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. This is cool. I like being able to see both, so I don't feel like I have to get off the book to talk. But I feel like I gotta take off my sweatshirt. Smooth, wasn't that? Anyways, let's get right into the news. Cigarettes are shit, but living is harsh. So what are the youth to do? Suck it up and deal, or cough out all the tension that Adderall build up in the brain? I say it's worth the years shaved away. It's not like you'll miss much anyways. A few decades are pebbles thrown in the river, forgotten and impossible to find again. So I'd rather have a black lung than a high life expectancy. How did I get nah? Huh? Kill me quicker so there's less shit that I have to deal with. Man, she is emo. Yeah, right? It's, I'm in a bit of an irritable mood. Right before break, I got an in-school suspension for skipping class, which means I have to sit in the same room from 7:30 to 2:30 under the purview of the weirdly dominative chorus teacher whose real job was just being detention bitch, sitting with a thumb up his ass and ruler dipped in his dick, brandishing after destroying his tip to whip at your hands for not keeping busy. Basically, he was a little slice of Lucifer, a soft-spoken flit that liked to use bitchy little lines like, "You're expecting me to wait 2 minutes, and you're not even the second coming." No spouse, big surprise, because not even a nun could stand that white hair comb-over piece of shit, but quite a few rumors round about that he had some rowdy boys to hang around with. Diddling kids was nothing new at West Catholic, and so he was one of the highest paid staffers. What's the difference between high school and a brothel? I love Catholics. I love Catholics because I was not raised Christian. But obviously, as an American, I got a lot of resentment for Christian culture. And the Catholics have been so kind to provide a canvas for me to get that out. So I don't know, I like attacking them, but also it's in good fun. We get along. I appreciate it. There's also, it's weird. The child fucking is weird. I have so many Catholic friends, and it's such a common story. So for a fucking week, I was told to come in and sit with this ruler cracking bitch, even though I was cut class for a family emergency, and even though I put in the paperwork to drop out of the school. I did that recently, but still. Ridiculous that they still expected to be able to punish me, and that I would do drills with them. Worse that I did it. When I asked to drop out first, I asked for a few weeks' leave due to the family emergency, but the receptionist, Miss Rivers, said, "I'm sure one of our counselors could talk to you if you're having some emotional difficulty." The sole counselor on staff was the 34-year-old ex-businessman type who was always looking around the room like he was reading Flight Times. He approached the disturbed mind like an unbalanced checkbook, thinking things needed to be jumbled around for everything to be set aright. Even as he gave advice, the transient nature was overbearing. Like halfway through the sentence, he could just get up and go get some cigarettes. None of this was to say he was a bad person, just an incompetent one, and certainly not one who I trust a broken heart with. But my last week of high school was spent signing in with the hell bitch Miss Rivers, and then being locked in the dungeon with that rabbit fruit bat whose only regret about punishing me was that I wasn't a cute boy for him to court. After the entire day of that, I would be out on the court, running drills with the team I fucking built, still doing more work than the coach. Somehow they painted that as part of my rehabilitation, like it was punishment for me to do what gave me my reputation in the school, and the only fucking reason I chose the school. Why did I do it? Why did I take the abuse? Because I didn't want these godless fucks to be able to file me on my way out. How would I want to spend my time? Well, my favorite atmosphere is that of the guild. That of the guild. So like those dicks from The Overcoat, our Sisley's painting of the forge, or the self-portraits of the Japanese wood carvers. If somebody's smoking indoors while mulling something over, likes are I'm into it. I think it's a shame we don't have as much of that anymore. I feel like smoking is the modern forge, a way to carry the element of fire with you, which I consider perhaps the crux of alchemy. So I work in the garage, which doubles as Dad's study. I make sure to keep the books as he does, replacing them as I found them once I'm done with them. The middle of the room got fucked, though. I took out his desk he made with Garth years ago, and his chair made with that leather that Moon killed a bear for. Both found their way into the master bedroom. In the space they used to take up, I put a layer of cut-up garbage bags on the floor, 4 easel, rows of 2, back to back, and stool. All around the roof of the garage, Dad installed these hanging arms suspended like a dentist tray. They could be grabbed and pulled to any point of elevation in the room. There were 6 of them, one coming out of each of the corners and 2 in the middle. I used one for a pallet, one to hold my tools, one for smokes and books, and the rest as ashtrays. It's my favorite place in the whole world. As I've worked in it, the smell of the room has slowly been shifted from cannabis and ink to tobacco mixed with paint. It's not that much of a difference, to be honest. It's just the fumes of the modern factory. The stink of progress. The garage is good. I almost want the dad to have his own house. We'll talk about it later. But on the garage door hangs one of my first failures, an attempt to paint the portrait of the nose, or dog. It's a great name for a dog. Laying out the first coat was a pleasure, a chic blue as bold as finger paint. The oil spread across the canvas with the wrist, splatting on fluid strokes. As the color spread, the tones broke up in a gradual, rich spread, giving character with the base. It went fine as I was texturing out the fur. The body came along in a convincing way. What I fucked up on were the ears of the mighty Pyrenees. While trying to structure them, I ended up utterly marginalizing her facial features. The line from her ear turned her neck into a stump, which brought her snout down to the feeling of the tube. So I scratched all the architecture and floated it into a cloud, drawing out to the tension of her fur, wider and more evenly so the fluff dissipated into wisp. Once the edges were frayed enough, I got the rest of the oil to fill out the trails, bubbling up the body out to a paste. It responded to my touch like it wanted to bore out its full belly. So I whipped it into a cumulus pillar, piling it up and out, up and out. I think I'm going to do up and out. The nose's legs and stomach easily gave way to the new form, slipping away in the wreckage without resistance. All of the whites in her fur repurposed from grit to flow, and her throat exploded in her face with a grateful sigh, finally allowed to relax her expression. The entirety of her body spludged out until there was no semblance of her form. Extra whites left by her fur blended into the blue background. lines cutting across as the clouds in the distance, and reassociating the ethereal color into a push and pull of tone, faded blues, near fogged out, and crisp patches as noble as sunlight. As all the excess drained into the rest of the piece, balance spread across it, not in a perfect way, but a satisfying one. Instead of a hodgepodge of shitty line work drowning in good texture, I had a bloody piece of color that separated itself into a strong theme of absent-minded tones and presented a strong context and scene. It's my own little piece of cafe art, something shitty and basic to look at as I work and zone out into my own world. So we're gonna go right into the painting, huh? This is the painting stream. Next to it on the right are my studies of burning California. One of my favorite pieces is the demolition of an old historic apartment complex in San Francisco. The moment of climax as dust blows out of the building in a fierce gust. The whole thing is drenched in gray, like the sea after a murderous winter morning. The structure of the building was an ornate but affordable design, an heirloom from when the phrase American craftsmanship meant something. Its yellow walls came to an end in tall gray corners, meeting the yellow brick with a classy kiss, the bottom being torn orange by the detonation in the basement. Fumes hugging the pillars as they escaped, weaving in and out of shattered windows, fingers stretched far into the sky. Another scene from San Diego County. The doorframe of a house ablaze, roof to the porch mostly fallen except for a sole support beam, fire snaking around that in explosive stride. Its inside is lost to the forest's revenge, only pieces visible inside. A French press, a row of hanging pans. The front of the house is accented thickly in solid green, a palette that belongs to clearings and evergreens, the body of it a pale tone of green halfway to yellow. Then a bar in North Park, completely torn in half. The center of it split on two axes, sparks lighting up the center of the piece like sparks or glitter. Stools stood on an uneven ground, the bar split at an open angle, standing up against itself, lifting the screws on the bottom of it. Patrons around it too worried, taking photos and talking. One motherfucker still at the bar, sipping on a whiskey with a lit cigarette in the other hand. On the front wall, a piece of graffiti, a smiling skeleton with a hat around its bare temples. A night scene, lit by the cigarettes of the victims and sparks of the broken wires. Mostly purple themes with that ever-present concrete feel of North Park, a clean industrial design with something almost square. The other pieces were of NorCal burning, houses tucked into forestation screaming as its population tax, branches striking human abodes with the burning bodies. Okay, I understand what that sentence means now. The other pieces were of NorCal burning, houses tucked into forestation screaming at its population tax, branches striking at human abodes with the burning bodies. I think that deserves another ellipses. The trunks of trees have always reminded me of women's legs, like if giants were ostriches, only revealing what goes on under a tutu, spearing limber legs up into the open air with a liberating statement and grip and strike, their sexy shape to turn lethal, falling through porches and striking windows with BDSM lines cut like graph paper. Boxes kicked open and rotted out by these massive limbs, orange and brown finding purple homes, tan and wooden. Smoke plumbed into the distance, rolling into the hills, those beautiful hills that give way to a hanging blue, even though most of the scene is dominated by a burning atmosphere, ripping like the sun through closed eyes. It's funny because I want to slow down. This is also the first time I read this in a year, so I'm kind of almost excited, I would say. Ooh, wow. So yeah, this is basically this is trying to get the feeling of being in her studio, obviously, but the idea behind it is just informing it through the view of a painter and how they actually experience their work based on my experience with painters, and also something I'll bring it up in a second. So, back to it. On the left, a series of the model, my the background rotating between ballrooms and my studio. All of the places she performs or practices are so regal. Wood in that dark English style, flowing white curtains like wedding dresses. In one of them I have her midair, split in a leap, legs parallel with the trim. She's in her skin-tight ballerina trappings, little more than leggings and a tube top. It's so classy. Her movements pause perfectly when I paint her right, like she'll tear off the canvas into a display of talent. The muscles in her body are so taut and young, more like a killer's than an entertainer's, and her expression bleeds nobility. Not the British crown or the southern cesspit's recreation of that world, but that cold European face, a princess of the snow and of places more remote than fog can observe. Her nose points like a sword, her whole body sings in edges. In her split above the ground, the bottom half of the piece remains undisturbed, and airless and aristocratic interior, hard-washed floors without a strain other than the sweat of carpentry, walls white without rival, glowing more than paper, dark trim hugging it, brought out into a pronounced contrast that reaffirms the structure. The top half of the piece is busy, full with the trims continuing to rise at every fourth of the wall, split once into a window revealing the sprawling Cascorder skyline and her body. One foot fully extended ahead of her, another behind, both ending in black tips, fed by lithe trunks of a soft white paired with black top, crossed along her shoulder, bringing out her natural complexion and crisp relief. Her blue eyes look at nothing. Her body sees. Blonde hair tight in a ponytail, as fully in focus as the resting place of the piece. She makes my mouth water. Another piece has her posing in my studio, body fully vertical except for the bow of her leg, her arms wrapped together above her head. This piece has her in casual clothes, black leggings, and a lesbian autumn-flavored 3/4 sleeve. The outfit bleeds into the color of the garage, its aged greens and grays accepting her clothing, while popping out her complexion like an unpainted marble statue. Her expression is distant, again, as she internalizes a movement before releasing it with her body, caught in the thinking expression of the dancer. Around her the air tenses, ready to let her break free with an expression of beauty, waiting for her skillful way of swimming around it, like the ground opens up for a body. Another of her landing after a mid-air kick, about to launch into another, her foot barely kissing the ground, all of her weight displaced by a bending tip of her extremity. One from the same series is the vertical piece of her looking like a Hindu goddess, this one catching in her the spirit of expertise. Her expression rings that of a master, her focus alive, her body fully present. The next movement in her soul, like the next verse, hangs in the mind of a rapper. But she still haunts my studio in that, like she haunts all of the pieces painted in my studio. Perhaps due to my overemphasis on the whites. But how could you not? The presence bleeds purity. She deserves the tone and setting of a cherub. Two other pieces of her hang from the dance studio, and it's in those she's not haunting. She's stunning, like Diana bathing in the woods. Even I, looking at the paintings, feel a dread of being transformed into a hunt for the dogs to rip apart in her wrath. There is no way I've been able to capture her that is not an intimidating statement of prowess and beauty. She reacts to it with a soft air of surprise, but I can see this compliment take root in the way she speaks of herself around me. It's like she becomes the goddess I see her to be. So, now I feel like it's time to... Yes. Oh, that was too far. But this is the journal Oh no, it's messy. This is the journal of Eugene Delacroix. Has been very useful for writing a painter. Um, he's got like a beautiful way of talking. A mere cast taken from nature will always be more real than the best copy a man can produce. For the word realism, for the word realism to have any meaning, and for any meaning, all men would need to be of the same mind to conceive of things in the same way. So like stuff like that is fucking great. Also, his technical conversation about color. He just has like entire pages just talking about halftones. He talks about halftones a lot, which I found very illuminating. Because I haven't really, I have no art history background, so I just like painters, but they know about halftones, but I haven't really had many conversations with them about it before getting put onto it by him. So that was very useful. Also, look at this shit, dude. Isn't this weird? Right? How long has this been streaming? 20 minutes. 20 minutes, and we got through all that. Um, yeah. I love the painting. I love painting in general, and this is me trying to do something with my art to respect that or sort of work with that. Um, and that relationship's also mirrored with Joan and Marie through the exemplification of classic European art in Marie, um, with the cherubian figure and also dance and things like that. The sort of stilted culture where Joan's like, I mean, obviously heavy influence from me. Not gonna. I want to get more of the book out there before we talk about that more generally, but um, you know, I'm very interested in art history, and I'm very interested in the history of literature and things like that. But I wouldn't say that like I'm a traditionalist in terms of I don't really have it figured out. Like I don't really have a I don't know what you should do. I think studying's good. I think that using things from the past is good. Obviously, I think it like gave me most of what I work with. I also think this is hilarious, so that's why I'm doing that. But yeah, so like I think that classic art can be incredibly inspiring, but I also think that holding to the tradition of it sort of does create this culture that's half alive. That's what I would call it. I'd call it half alive. Uh, kind of want to let's get back into the story. When she first saw my studio, she compared it to her burrow. That's from Kafka directly. That's from Kafka's Burrow. That's another thing is like when I write, I do love to put books into my writing. But so which I also took in my heart as a compliment and held on to. If there's any animal nobly dedicated to its task, it is the mole in its dimly lit burrow, pushing its way with its little digits toward structure and home, shoveling dirt to make beautiful tunnels architected like spider webs. She smirked when I told her that, her thin lips contrasting against the paleness of her face, the red line in the snow. Marie was such an aristocrat it drove me crazy. Her outfits were either that of the dancer or of the daughter of a downed bomber pilot. Her taste for faded greens and washed out grays did nothing to mar the perfection of her presence. When she entered my house, she shrugged off the atmosphere like water, responding to everything in that way of hers. My mother would just call out with drunken excitement, asking if I had company, and Marie would answer back just loud enough. Here's Natasha. Or here, Natasha. How are you doing? And Mom would scream with that tone you can hear her smiling, jumping out of the other room as the ice in her glass clinked. In a stunning outfit really anyone would ever see, a black top with fabric draping off the shoulders to above her knees, pants that hung to her form with class, tougher than legging, more sensitive than jean, accents of flowers on her top and on her belt. She ran to the front of the house as Marie smiled with her nose, and I sighed. Marie, I'm well. Hello, 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 hello. How are you? Mom would sing, hugging me with my face pressed against her collarbone, then hugging Marie to his shoulder, not a drop spilled. I'm glad to hear it. I'm doing well as well, Marie replied with manners, curtsying with her eye contact. Any news for you? Well, I'm glad you asked, Mom began. There's this old building in Boston Edison that they're tearing down, and it's just tearing out my heart. The building is worth about 200,000 in repairs, but the lot has gone up to 4 million in the past year, ever since they built that school on Oakland and Hague. Oh no, Marie said, eating up my mother's worry. So obviously the backdrop, obviously. There's a problem going on, we know. That's the one that Dad built, yeah? I asked. Yes, sweetie, but this home has such a pregnant history with the city. At first it was the home of one of the Ford tycoons, an excellent piece of work, 3 stories high. It had iron windows and an interior of all mahogany. Jesus Christ, I can't give a fuck about this. The kitchen was an achievement of spacing. Lines drawn too perfectly at hand level for a woman, another for men. Perfect amount of room for foods in the cabinet, spices on the shelf. But then you understand by now the issue with all the Ford money, the flight, all that. For a decade it fell into disrepair. Inconsistent tenants, teenagers fucking on the couches, drugs laid out strewn on the floor. Yet after that, one of the addicts found success as a playwright. She produced a piece of work that shook the city, a revolving cycle of confident and unforgivable tragedy, lines that broke like goose eggs from pans. She took it on herself to convert the property into a haven for painters and poets. Are you talking about the Raven's Nest? Marie asked, tilting her head, the shadows shifting from being split by her nose to covering most of her face, cutting under her eye. Exactly that one, Mom said with a sigh, which turned into sipping her drink. What a crisis, Marie pouted. It is, Mom replied. Work in that building was so paramount not only to the city, but to the country. It was an American institution. They even did most of the repair projects in the North End in that era, training children and people with profession alike. And their music, that was the sound of our festivals, even if they were just a food stand in alleyways with a saxophone, a violin, a viola, and a drum set. Too true, Marie agreed. My parents used to take me to the art festivals around that time and talk about how the old ones used to be. After that time, you're working with me now. I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Uh, Decades ago when that stuff was just going out. I've always been infected with nostalgia for that era I never got to see. It seems so much more enfleshed than our own times. What a weird one. Mom looked at the floor for a few moments, one arm crossed across her chest, the other propped up, propped out from that, like a drawer with too much paint lathered on in a corner. I pulled out my pack of cigarettes and took one to put behind my ear, and I offered one to Mom. She accepted it with a nod, then uncrossed her arms. After I lit both of ours, she took a deep inhale, thanked me, and then began again. It was a heavier era, for sure. I can't even begin to understand the 50s, back when the telephone was a sort of magical device. But nowadays, your phones are magical devices. You can reach anyone, do anything, see anything. I've missed everything, even what I didn't have, just like you. She exhaled to the side, blowing deeper into the home. But you kids did miss out on something. Something like a peace of mind. A quiet city. Or a quiet her one. One that hummed instead of scattered and spat and zoomed and chunked and clunked. One where the bar was a boat full of people, sometimes a cruise, sometimes a dinghy, but never a spider web of Instagram pages and networks that sprawled global domains. It was so much more solid than this. Do you notice a change? Marie asked. Yeah, kind of. In a very difficult sense, Mom answered in between sips. It just sort of fell out from under me. Dreaming of flipping vinyls during dinner parties in my apartment in a city where I could rise from nobody into somebody, things just shifted. It wasn't New York or Los Angeles or Chicago anymore. It was America. No, it was business. Everywhere just became business. Before you had dealings with Europe and Asia, now they flew over or owned the building next to you, and if you went to their cities, then there were American buildings, our apartment complexes and boutiques. The fax was too slow, a scanner obsolete. You needed phone scans and hourly contact, everyone chatting to everyone, always. No time for life. Children shipped to schools where they learn the art of the phone. Meals turned into workout routines, water into coffee, coffee into medicines. Everything went from life into a dream, where you needed to simply lift your feet, and your body would be carried away, forward, forward. That's rough, Mom. I cut in. Is life really getting that bad? How can we even expect ourselves to deal with it? It's almost like our bodies will collapse. Mom stared at me with hurt bubbling in the whites of her eyes, but irises like clenched fists resizing and regripping around the pinpoint daggers of her pupils. The light in their eyes danced with a deep and piercing dance, her atmosphere of calm and presentability unbroken, but her punch reached down to the bottom of the stomach. I tried to shrug it off, but felt tears in my lungs. Yes, dear, it is getting difficult, especially for you young ones. I feel for you in my heart every day, but it's always been hard. Every generation has had it harder than the last. The world is always growing and outgrowing. She lifted her glass almost to 45 degrees. And that's why we'll always be a bit nostalgic, especially for what we've never known or we offered quietly. I dropped my eyes and muttered something about needing to get to work and that I loved my mother, then pulled Marie by her hand and started on the way towards the garage. Mom followed her as she passed by and smiled. Yes, I think that's exactly it. You girls have fun. She started on her rounds, turning into the living room to look through her vinyl collection. As we passed deeper into the house, I heard her open a window. The studio was connected to the kitchen, that too commonly told story of the Michigan architect. To get by, we had to go through the hallway, which was open to the living room, a room with mostly windows and light tones. The coffee table had an ashtray that was growing fat with ashen butts. It was littered with gadget bits and sporty trinkets. Roman was sitting in Dad's lazy boy, a heap of technology in his lap. Wires were interspersed through his hands. Back from school, bub? I asked him. Funny, Mom, he replied, not looking up from his project. The machine was balanced on his knee as he was working on hooking up a claw to the bottom of it. It looked like something crossed between one of those hovering planes from video games and the Crane arcade experience. What school are you going to send this one to? I pressed with an affectionate crack in my voice. None, he replied right as he finished the wires and clicked the claw into place. He flicked it around and tested its motor with his phone. Marie oohed as it established itself with a noisy, balanced, even but blowing bits of ash into the air. And what's it for, sport? I asked, raising my voice over the whir of the motors. This fucking computer fan, I feel her. I feel you, Joan. This is bullshit. It's fucking loud technology. Probably bits of what it looked like. I'm assuming there's not ash coming off this thing. What's it for, sport? Baseball, Rowan yelled back. Baseball? I asked. Baseball, Rowan replied. He flipped through his phone, causing the claw to drop slowly and open and close, open and close. No fun to go searching through fields for lost balls. He turned it off and caught it in the air. All I need to do is add a sensor, then I can be able to stitch all day, hitting until the battery drains. So he taught a robot to play fetch, Marie asked with a nasal laugh, just a few short puffs of air escaping from her nostrils. Yep, and that's why we call it Fido, he said, real shit-eating like. Oh, come on, I moaned, and sulked into the kitchen. It was tucked away from the living room, still kissed by the feet of light from the huge windows, but lit by its own modest set. One square above the sink looking out into the lawn, the side that extends into the shrubbery and overgrown burweed, a manicured lawn running into something you'd do better with a machete for maintenance than a mower. Two other small windows in the corners of the room, an opaque cover hanging over them so that the light comes in like a sheet of paper, no ray of tones intruding, just a soft light that comes over the kitchen in a crispy way that soothes the brain. I like that sentence. That was fun. That was fun. A soft light that comes over the kitchen in a crispy way that soothes the brain. I'm pleased. I'm pleased. I'm pleased. You're here for my editing process, so I get to be happy with things. Uh, Marie looked like a princess in my house. Affluence was such a good decoration for her. The studio was behind a heavy wooden door, and as soon as we were inside of it, I set up one of the easels, throwing a work in progress about hurricanes to the side. I don't know. I can't spell. Fucking, is it E-I? I think it's E-I. Eh? I think it's Isles. I'm not good at this. I don't know English. We're gonna just leave it at the red. We're gonna leave it at the thing that looks like eagles. So what are we doing today? Marie asked. Why did you put a question mark there? I finished setting up the canvas, then turned off the loom right and switched over to the studio lights, bathing air in it. We're going to have fun, I said. You said stop making it look good. She smiled and looked at my feet. Oh. I walked over to her and took her jacket in my hands, the ancient veteran-colored garment easily sliding off her shoulders. Handling her arms like woodworking, I balanced the weight to get her down to a second layer, a baggy crew neck sweater. With my hand on her ass, the weight of her hips was shifted against mine, smelling her breath and kissing her neck as I removed her bulky shell, revealing the tube top that she had underneath, a white piece with thin straps and a cutesy pattern along the bottom and the sleeves. She moaned into my hair from the pressure of my lips, her slight height advantage leaving her breath playing with my ear. Once her baggy sweat was off, I draped her bomber jacket back over her, pulling her sleeve up to her elbows. Coming from behind, drawing my hands along her stomach, her breath felt shallow, excited. As my hands slipped over her belly, the anticipation was thick. She began to curl her shoulders into me, nervously shaking into my touch. My fingers fished their way to the button of her pants. My tongue was in her ear as I slipped the pants loose, opening her pants to display, sliding both sides of her zipper open to form a figure like the shape of a bikini. Without thinking about it, Marie grabbed one of my hands and pulled it to herself, starting to writhe as I tongue-plucked the earwax out of her cartilage and deeper, surrounding my fingers with her thighs, pressing me with soft warmth from all sides. I detached from her ear with a trail of split, replaced another hand on her side, digging in as I brought the side of my hand higher, hugging into her pussy. She started to cry out with her moans of fearful pleasure, like a stray taking in a meal. Her control completely faded into the high-pitched bubbles of lust, her eyes rolling away into a haze. In a moment I shifted my hands into her pants, my fingers greeted by her pussy with that lovely teenage slime, wet enough to soak her jeans, if not fur them. Hey, personal fucking reference. Teenage girls are grosser. Personal fucking reference, they're grosser. This is tame. This is fucking tame. This is realistic and tame. You don't know what the AIM chat likes. You don't know what fucking Skype is like. You don't know what all that shit. Oh my god. I'm not gonna lie in the portrait. Marie ran the leg back between mine as I started to rub her clit with my fingers, gentle circles in an unrelenting rhythm. My other hand drew up to her tits, supple and firm to the touch, something violently lustful, a perfection of creation. As she huffed and moaned and wet my fingers so much I could already feel them sticking together, she began to buckle, humping her way with her ass against my hips down to the floor. Once we settled, my lips drug across her neck. My fingers separated the hood of her clit to get a better angle. My fingers pinched her nipples between the bars of my fingers. Once I started to tug with the grip I had on her tit, I dug my teeth into her nape, turning such an overconfident woman into repeated moans and twitching legs. In a fit, she threw an arm up and reached for my hair, pulling it as my teeth sunk deeper. Letting go of the now hardened dot on her tit, I opened my hand, taking her breast fully in it, pulling the soft flesh with my grabs and gropes, forcing her closer against me, rebalancing her clit more onto my touch. With something violent, she pulled my hair and screamed, eyes closing and heart racing. I could feel the twitch of her pussy as her legs shot out, then twitched back as she reached for me, grabbing my hands and the side of my face as her pussy went from convulsing to sighing, her breath relaxing as she roped my arms around her, kissing my hands and sliding down to my shoulders, sleepily forcing herself into the nook of my arm, resting her face on my tits. First I smelled my fingers, then ran them along my teeth to take the strings of her cum. Then I held her in my arms, playing with her hair in between my fingers. The taste of Marie was like a sour pastry, perfect and decadent, but with a punch of something not natural. At first I thought it was a bit much, but it grew into a taste more natural than mustard or blood to me. Resting against the garage door, I know. Resting against the garage door, the scene in the garage was all sorts of calm. Her body felt heavy with satisfaction as she nuzzled into me, and the air of the studio was slowly dancing, the light on us like a spotlight. The rest of the room melted into black. It brings back the days of standing with the curtains, watching from behind as Marie's troupe took the stage, dozens of legs shooting out and flying around on the island of light, figures switching places and swimming through space, melting together and apart, vibrating with an acid quiver. A sea of black in front of the light, filled with nothing but the darkly reflected balls of rows and rows of eyes, and the occasional electronic. The feeling of being combed over by an appreciative and hungry audience. I kissed her hair and her ear a few times, waking her up from her slumber a little bit. She fluttered her eyes and smiled with a and so I replied, up, and she said, what? And I hugged her to me, crunching her, then opened up my legs and picked up her weight slightly, leading with my pussy, then repeated, up. She groaned, then leaned forward on her knees, letting me get free so I could get up. To do so, most of my weight had to be rolled on my arms, and I had to slide myself up and back from under her. What do I do? She cooed as I walked over to the lights, drawing the lines of her influence over her body, one off center, breaking against her shoulder and forming a curve along her stomach, the other breaking against her knee. Nothing, I replied. Just stay right there. Okay, so I think this is how we do that, right? It would be, is a comma, and we got that, then, bam. I don't know why I did one quote line there. I don't know. Her eyes were still hazy and fluttering, like she was about to fall asleep. The bomber jacket was stuck around her elbows, looking like the covers that she just arose from. She drew a hand along her face and yawned. I finished setting up the lighting so that none of it... I don't know you. I got a phone call. I'm sorry. How do I don't know how to use fucking phones. Is this somebody important? Let me check. Nope. Maybe. Unknown. I think it was my landlord. Text me, dude. I'm busy right now. Let's see, comfort. Her eyes were still hazy and fluttering, like she was about to fall asleep. The bomber jacket was stuck around her elbows, looking like the covers that she just arose from. She drew a hand along her face and yawned. I finished setting up the lighting so that none of it highlighted her skin too purely. I was architecting it so that tones over her body would break into a radiant of a knowable lust rather than a princess. Fine line there, but still. Her eyes I kept in dark illumination, visible, but hard to peer into, looking at you, but through the room. I told her to fold her knees back so that her posture had more structure, but that the exhausted effect of the posture left her leaning into herself anyways. After fidgeting with one, it let her skin shine too light, but it was too perfect for her hair, and it did a lot more for her body, so I switched over to the other light and switched up the angle, adding more light but equalizing the tones with the contrast, so although it was more visible, the whites blended together into a forgettable mush, a string of them from her collarbone to her ribs, something that rang more true as temptress than privileged. Once it was all set up, Marie looked like a tired beauty, something Dad would have told me about from Dostoevsky or Hamsun, a haggardly loving woman, the strongest beauty, someone of character and strength, along with all the physical virtues. Okay. Housekeeping. I live in a house. Uh, I didn't know about that, but that's the thing. Beauty of an open window. I think we're good. I'm coming to you live. Once it was all set up, Marie looked like a tired beauty. Something Dad would have told me about from Dostoevsky or Hamsun. A haggardly loving woman. The strongest beauty. Someone of character and strength along with all the physical virtues. She peered out with sleepy eyes that had more curiosity than anything now, trained on my hands and following all of my movements with a slow and lingering gaze. I walked over to her and dug out a roll of papers from my pocket. Marie raised her eyebrows as I raised the stack over to her. In a meticulous but quick form, dripped singles over her, letting them float down on her shoulders and on her tits, some onto her legs, some around her, some in between her legs. Not too many bills to make her look like some deity, but enough to make her look like a diamond of her sexuality. She shouted and laughed, then cocked her head to the side as if the bills fell. As the bills fell, they played along with it. "This is how you make me look less classy?" she asked, spitting out of tired lips. "No, but this is how I make you look like the company queens keep," I replied. Marie blushed and looked at her knees. "Oh." Once the bill settled, I kissed her on the lips, placed one of the 20s on her shoulder, then set up by the lights again, doing some minor tweaks. Got the light to have the right texture with her hair, not something too clean, not something too messy, just a golden texture offset by the glow of her skin and the grain of the bills. Settling that, I went over to the canvas and pulled down one of the hanging mechanical arms I used for my palette, the other for my paints. I began to lay out the first layer, a golden red, laid out in consistent long licks, spread out like the cum on my fingers. It rolled onto the canvas. I need to be banned from English. I need to get English taken away from me. Holy shit. It rolled onto the canvas with schlicks, bringing out the blush in her cheeks as it became present in the room. She held her position, one shoulder holding the weight, the other lower and slightly behind her, an innocent view of a spoiled woman. Marie looked at the ground, her eyes caught on the fourth closest to her in the distance between her and the foot of the easel I was working on. Her brain turned around in that skull of hers so much I could almost hear her thoughts, but her sigh implied that nothing was left. It was merely a satisfied shell. Squeezing out paints on the tray hanging at the elbow level, I reassessed the lighting and found it sufficient. It was in between strip club. And a ring of trucks glaring at a victim, reflecting off her skin like the fear bounces off a soon-to-be killed or raped mammal in the grips of a gang. They poured over her flesh, revealing an unwrinkled and ready being, one about to heave herself or be heaved into the cycles of life. Terrible time to burp. One about to heave herself or be hived into this. One about to heave herself or be heaved into the cycles of life. Her shirt clung to her as a disheveled mess. As a disheveled. No, fuck you. Her pants a little more than a cover. Never shamed, though. Even now, Marie looked absent, if anything. There was no taking advantage of her. The game always remained in the deuce. I started with her form, a warmish pink, more skeletal and saturated, watering down the background into a form. Like a birth in a tube, her body started out a confused mess of white nonsense, strings of nothing in a chaotic red sludge, slowly winning over the material to form. The blob first slopped on as opaque dots that could be spread out into a disappearing tone, licked by the hair of the brush until slowly the sides of her stomach formed, the cage of her womb converting the red into body first. A few more blobs in her legs could be drawn out of her slim figure, buckling out from her and back under themselves, refolding into themselves neatly. one foot barely from out poked out from behind her. I drew paint without leaving it on the piece, first from her hips up to her armpits, thin lines that echoed the space between her legs. From her armpits I found the shelf of her tits, hanging them modestly with a slow touch, taking as much time on their curve as I did on her legs. Dropping down that, I finished her stomach, then followed it up to her shoulders, which became her neck. With her legs cut out from the fold, she looked like a broken statue Macintosh plush would drool for. To be honest, I thought about taking a photo of the work as I developed it, but decided to keep the rhythm. A few more dots to swerve into a skull, rounding out the shape into an intimidating but delicate form, a petite oval that sung back to the ideals of forms, but gifted with the flaws of the human form. Using a bit of tan, I gave differentiation between brows and forehead, cheek and nose. The morose purple did a bit to liven up her eyes in the ways of the nocturnal, giving the most paley form a weight. Most pale form a weight. How did I get paley, bro? You're tired. The red I used for the background kissed her cheeks and formed her lips. Returning to my first brush, I finished her arms, dropping from her shoulders and ending with one hand on the ground, another resting against her knee. The finished being resembled the first day of succubus, an untouchable white flower that would delight any eye lost in a sea of murder and power. Finished with her outline, I put down my brush and pulled out a cigarette. It's coming out, I told Marie as I lit up, shifting my eyes between the piece and her until my eyes eventually fell on her tits, cupping them with my focus. She said nothing, more modest than Chekhov's and Yuta. Odd that in the same woman wrestled so desperately the aristocrat and the servant. And I'm going to defend myself here. So the reason why Joan references these stories offhandedly is that, like, Aniyuta, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but that directly plays into her interest from the canon of Chekhov. And if her father is a huge fan of those stories, you know, it makes sense that she would gravitate towards the ones that are either directly related to her interest or reminiscent of her own life. Cool. So that's what that was just my point on that. How much longer do we have on this fucking part? Okay, cool. So we got like 2 pages left. After that, I'm probably gonna call it quits because this is a lot to go through. And yeah, the way that I imagine this character is a light future. I want her to be iGen, kind of. I think she fits in with it. I think that she has a lot of the same character traits of, like, this sort of ironic, detached humor that's very aggressively sarcastic, but it's like this sort of painful sensitivity that is like incredibly involved and like realistic in her world that just can't be shared. Like that's where I really like the portrait of this character, and I think that that is an important feeling in this generation. So I'm happy with how her voice has come out. I feel like a lot of that is like in the character. Yeah. So after a few puffs, I picked up the brush again, keeping the smoke in the corner of my mouth. Forest green came out onto the palette in a pregnant rush, a color that I had the blessing of never overusing, meaning that I had always had a good supply. In a few strokes, I draped it around her elbows, circling around her thin form in baggy excess, bunching up her points into folds. I followed that back up to her shoulders and along her collarbones. Mixing it with the white, I started to spread out the tones from the elbow to level with her tits, building up the arms into a thick, opaque consistency, which seemed heavy against her ethereal form. To have fun with it, I emphasized the veteran feeling of her coat, wearing out the green until it grayed into a fabric that could be pierced with a few vicious claws. And I followed it, leaving it open, rolling it down to her sides, over the nipple on the side of her higher shoulder, but leaving the lower one exposed. With that, the basics of the coat could be finished, and I filled it in, patchy and washed out, the light breaking on it, revealing its age, while doing nothing to lessen the flesh of the cherub. A bit of gray mixed in to finish the garment, giving it a sandstone texture. Its old body hid her supple youth and its history, hanging from shoulder to shoulder with a protective attempt to protect her from anything, but revealing in its open stomach the reality of her vulnerability, that she was just a touch, a grasp away. Marie's eyes had glazed over a while ago, reaching the point where the model isn't bored, but she understands that she's more object than person, at least for the moment, at least for the hour. The V of her jeans was the first thing I did for her lower layer, a thin black line drawn over the entrance of her legs. I kept the gray on a brush in between my pinky and index finger as I worked on the section, forming out the wings of the waist of her pants, then detailing the interior of the split with the zipper, darkening the gray to slicken the button of her jeans. The jeans rolled down to the bottom of her knees easily, then to the rest of her legs, finishing the portrait in a more modest form than the rest of her body. No slack to the fit of her jeans other than them being loosened, so the fabric was tight against her muscles, but hanging off her knees and hips, completely resisting the light, but hung on to her body with a light touch, like one pool could rip it off her. Her feet I gave gray slippers, an indeterminate shoe, but with the silhouettes of chucks. Her outfit finished with a utilitarian vibe, a child of a workman lost on her walk home, or stolen from the bus. All I was missing was accessories, and so I loaded up another green, one with a touch of greed. First were the ones along her feet, bills crumbled and thrown in circles around her thighs, a few of them strewn across. To get them on her, I had to push away the paint I already used to give her life, moving the layers hesitantly, trying to get away with as much as I can without having to wait for it to dry. I lit another cigarette as I worked, flailing in the bills with the faces of various dead lesser men. Numbers littered the scene, hard to decipher in the bulging mess of color, but there, perhaps, if you tried hard enough to pierce the scene with your focus. They started to litter at her sides, a few stragglers missing along the scene around her, and I started to throw them on her, painting one over her shoulder, interrupting the purity of her complexion with the pale green of her currency, another on her stomach, the final one in her lap. Back to her face, I put all the clothing, brushes, and water, and brought back the red, white, and purple for her. Her eyelids I drew down, past the point of high, right at the point of barely recognizing the setting, a lofty detachment, something like a shame for humanity. Squeezing out a bit of blue, I started to fill in her eyes, giving that architect a frozen hue. Her soul in those eyes, watching her life as she watched us, surprisingly amused at her disappointments. But now something broken. Something returned. Another line of red between her lips, giving a bit of lust in her face. Purple again to break up the way her face glowed, bringing it back down to earth. Something less belly than Hugo, to be honest. And then to touch up her flesh, a kiss of red. So, like, the belly and Hugo, these references are like, so this is a developed voice, and she's using those authors to, like, that's pretension. Because it's like she's trying to get a sense of authority that she doesn't actually have. So, like, part of the name dropping and part of the over redness is, like, her insecurity in her voice. It's not like just, I mean, I don't want to talk about Victor Hugo. You know, that's just literally just in there to give her some sort of, you know. And then to touch up her flesh, a kiss of red, a lick of white, a shadow. Delacroix said never use gray, but I disagree. I want my paintings to rot, as the modern prose does. Perfection or illumination are the aims of genius. I want the moment. Flattening her complexion from that sickly model of the 1800s into the reality of heroin chic. I got her looking like a beggar with the eyes of a queen. Then the background. A dash to get to define the plane, then another to give it more. A few slashes of darker red and black to bleed in between asphalt and singed forestry. That was it. Let the model hang in a field of abstraction, her flesh sung for itself. I let out a sigh, cracked my neck, then dropped my cigarette and put it out with my foot. Finished, I said. We've got it. You sure? Marie asked, unmoving. Her hunger for a look was obvious in the way her tension was still held. Her shoulders tense as her eyes exploded. Still, that pride of a good girl, her body held in position. Her body held position. It was only her soul that yearned. Yeah, I'm sure, I said, stepping back and looking at her from a distance. Looking from a distance. I paced around it for a second, finding different angles, eyeing her tits on the canvas, then in real life, then back again. It was hard to capture her realness, that averageness which is innate in everybody, but an aspect of the truly beautiful in those intimidatingly quality people. It might be said the most charming aspect of even the largest of heroes, like that scene in The Idiot, when Napoleon speaks to the Russian student, trying to make him a citizen, but finding him a Russian, and accepting him as love, knowing the wisdom that not every land can go flagged. Some growl from the depths of frozen bamboo and expanses of snow, linked by nothing but a trail of tragedies and a name. Maybe he could even see that after he left Moscow, reinforcements would continue to arrive, never on time, but never stopping their march to defend the little that is theirs. Theirs, assuredly. Fuck. Dad read that book to me too many times. I asked him to, too many times. But still, that human element, the knowledge that a bullet could kill Elon Musk or Goethe, no one is safe from the breaths that we are, or the shits that we take. There's flesh around every great name, and flaw in every flesh. How to capture that in paint? I don't know. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that because I don't know what one I want. I'm really done, I said, getting out another cigarette. Marie drew the bomber jacket in, keeping it balanced in the nooks of her arm, lifting up softly to not disturb the way her clothing hung. Her hips swung wide and heavy with her approach, keeping her pants around where they were, even though they were undone. The way they hugged her thighs helped with that. As she turned to look at the easel, I looked away, watching the smoke collect into the roof of the garage, burning into where Dad spent so many hours trying to figure it out, what to do with the spare space that all of us keep vaulted above in our homes, servicing mostly as a field for our vision to explore, so these field animals don't break into insanity. In darts and flicks, her eyes explored the canvas, her posture twicking back into a silence, her elbow cupped in her hand. With slight movement, she turned her way around the piece, finding different angles, dominating herself with a powerful stab, reeling back in fear of her line of sight. I started packing a fresh pack of cigarettes, rhythmically beating it into my skin. Freeing herself, she stepped left, right, left, finding her way in and out of the shadows, her breath controlled as it is on the floor. I smoked too quickly, ashing a bit of the cherry as I flicked my smoke's excess onto the floor. So how did I do? I asked, laughing at nothing and taking another drag. She remained quiet, shifting to another position. The piece stared back at us lustily, dripping with an ambiance of shame and excitement, something decadent they used. From the distance, it was a swirling surge, red flung around her body an island in a rattling burn. The green of her coat protected her from attention, leaving her as a subject almost forgettable, a portrait of dead space. She moaned, then returned her elbow to her palm. It's gruesome, she responded, speaking through fingers. It's slaughter. It's perfect. I laughed again, then took out a cigarette as I finished the last one, opening the new pack. Yeah? You finally got away from Marie the Royal? Marie the Majestic? She laughed, staring deeper at the piece, her head cocked to the side, and she dropped her mouth open a little bit in imitation of the piece. Well, Queen of the Gutter now. That's dirty enough for me. It feels more real, more like something I shouldn't be, which is all I can be. The smoke plumed in circles, wrapping around itself, curling up, nothing. It flew as the city does, with no view. The gray of its body came into the room, choking out the space like the end of the night. Marie reached for a cigarette. I gave her one. Her coat was still drawn around her elbows. Cool. We got through it. We did it. That was hour. We did an hour. That was cool. I fucking love that part of the book. Very painting heavy, very literature heavy. The Russia shit, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I love their stories from history. That Napoleon story, I think, is fucking great. Uh, but I don't know. It's cool to have the opportunity to make a work that includes all of these things, even if it is somewhat slightly unrealistic for her to have the ability to talk about it that way. Specifically on a subject like that, it's easier to just make it her parroting her dad, because like even if a teenager did know that information, it would come across very. I don't think it'd be fun to hear. I think that keeps it condensed, it keeps it like localized, and then it just also it gives you information about two characters. I don't know. I like that. I like having her be very cultured. There's also the struggle with like school and education, and then like culture and exposure, which I think is a crucial element to this. There was a lot of sex, so there was a lot of sex, and why are we doing that? Well, if we remember the opening of the book, it also had a lot of sex, and it was very negative. It was an incredibly negative experience, and I mean, I think that when you have these two things contrasted in the beginning of the book, you have a more realistic experience of what teenagers are going through. Like, I understand all these like fucking romance plots and all these like whatever. And I mean, I wrote this when I was younger. I'm very glad I don't have to write this now because I'm not even like halfway through my 20s, but it does just feel like I would not want to get into this headspace anymore. So I'm glad I got this out of me for the most part. I have no sex scenes left to write, so woo. But they work. They work within the narrative. I think that they do portray realistic diversity of sexual experience as a young woman. And there's also this, there's another identity question where it comes into sexuality and like this idea of bisexuality, but also so it's like this openness to men, but like this, as far as we've seen, negative history with it. So there's this sort of like inability to say no or inability to reject people and an inability to essentially stand up for yourself or run away or do anything. So this locking out of action. Um, and I think it's a serious thing that happens. I think it's very relatable, honestly, and that's why this book is this way. And I think that also, like, there is this sort of odd intimacy that comes along with teenage relationships that I tried to cover with Marie and John. It's getting loud here, so I'm probably gonna call it. That was great, though. Thanks for hanging out with me. Trying to do it every Saturday. I was tired this time, but we got fucking cool part, and the technology's working. Fucking awesome, exciting. It's so lit. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. I was gonna smoke some, do a little recap, but I feel like that would be. I feel like it'd be more annoying, because So have a good day. Happy Saturday. Happy 2020. Hope it's treating you well. All that, and we're just gonna end it. Yeah.